Welcome to MidLIFE Matters, where we celebrate women's wisdom and wit. I'm Georgian Lussier, your host, and I'm delighted to introduce today's guest, Randi Frank. Randi is an independent human resources consultant serving many municipalities as well as for-profit organizations. Welcome, Randi.
Thank you.
Delighted to have you here.
Yes.
Let's talk about some of your services that you provide and the general, experiences being a human resources professional. So some of the areas include compensation, which job descriptions, recruiting,
Right.
personnel policies, training around labor laws, etc. What areas do you find managers typically need help with?
I think the recruiting is the service that I do the most of because they just don't have the time to do it right, to make sure that the job description is correct to start with and to figure out the needs of the community. Just because it's the same title as another community or agency doesn't mean it's that they need a cookie cutter person. They need to find out what are the hot issues, what are the special needs of the organization, what the qualifications are, and how to find someone that's in the field. And most of the places I work with just put it out in like a newspaper or one of those wonderful online things. But it's not going to the people that are in the field. If you're looking for finance people, you want to go to the Finance Association. If you're looking for HR people, you want to go to the HR associations and really get the word out. And that's one of the things that I do a lot of is I actually send out emails to people in the field that are active in the organizations because they know who's looking. Because not everybody sees all of the advertisements, but if I send them an email with a pretty profile that tells them everything about the job, then they get excited.
You find, I know you do a lot of your work with municipalities,
Yes.
towns and cities.
It's my
A
background.
lot of it's in Connecticut, but you've also worked in other states.
Yes, I've done Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Delaware, Virginia.
Okay. What do you see in common and what tends to be different about working for for-profit
profit.
organizations compared to, say, municipalities?
Well, for me, municipalities is a natural thing because that's where I came out of. That's my background. They take a longer time to figure out where they want to go and what they want to do. And there's a lot more committees involved. For example, with a university, they have a whole panel of committee members that have to review everything before you get to even the small list of people for interviews. So that takes time. Compared to for-profit on a recruitment, there's only 1 or 2 or 3 people that you have to talk to. For-profit, I do mostly smaller organizations, and they just don't have an HR person and don't know what the process is. So I have to sort of take them step by step by step. But again, I'm only working with 1 person or 2 people. It's a little faster.
What is some sage advice for, say, individuals and managers embarking on a recruitment process?
I think part of it is think about what you would want in the person, what questions you would ask if you were going for this position, what you would prepare for. So think about it from your own standpoint. One of the things is you really have to get the word out there, and you really have to identify what the most important parts are. If I'm doing a CEO position, some CEOs, the most important part is leadership or management. Others, it's budgeting because they're in desperate need and they need to figure out how to do more with less. Mm-hmm. So you got to tell that to the candidates and ask them to give you information on why they would be good at that. One of the things that we do is a questionnaire that, number 1, tells us how well they can write, and number 2, tells us if they have experience with those specific issues. I find out from the organization what are the hot topics, what's the next big thing on the horizon, what happened before and what you want to change, how it didn't work before and how you want it to be better, so that we can ask those questions to candidates. How did you improve this process when it all went wrong? Mm-hmm. So we ask those kinds of questions in writing form and ask the candidates to give us that example. And one of the things that most of my clients have said to me is that, wow, when I read the questionnaire, I really could tell the difference from their resume to this is the one that clicks with me. Mm-hmm. And at that point, most of these people are qualified. All of them probably could do the job, but it's what clicks with the organization. They get me. They get this organization. They get this issue. And that's the person I want to interview. So
And
that's
my
kinda
understanding is municipalities, it's a much more open process.
cool. Oh, yes, it's a panel of people. I did one. We had a panel of 10 people, including citizens, officials, council people, neighborhood organizations, all in the same room rating the same person. Mm-hmm. So but the types of people we bring into those kinds of positions have been out in the public. And if they can't handle 10 people in a room, mm-hmm. they're not going to do the job very well, because that's part of their job, is to be out there with the public. So.
And how do you keep up with changing labor laws and requirements to help with personnel policies and different issues that arise?
To put the personnel policies, I go to a lot of HR meetings and keep on top of that. And I have a number of team members that I work with, consultants that have dealt with something more than I have. And so we bounce things off of but I am not an attorney, so I always let them know, here's what you need to know, but you need to have it approved by an attorney, because he or she is going to have to defend you if anything happens. So.
And you've presented workshops
Mm-hmm.
on a variety of topics, and you've given presentations. Talk about what some of those topics.
Most everybody has wanted me to talk about the basics of HR, a lot about the executive search. So many of the organizations that I'm a part of or have heard me want to understand the process, not only for their organization, but they may be going for a executive search and want to know how a recruiter does this process, so that they can be prepared when they go for an interview. To also understand what the costs are to do the process and what's the advantage of bringing someone from the outside. Many people want someone from the outside because they don't want anyone who knows any of the listing candidates. I have one project where I just review the resumes and say, these people are qualified or not qualified. And then they take it from there, because that way I wouldn't know the person, because I don't live in the community. Mm-hmm. And I don't know the various people. So I can look at it professionally.
Yes.
I always look at what people know, how they've done their work, rather than who they know. I don't care who they know. I want to know what they know and how they've done it in other situations. So that gives them that objective look at the candidates before any other politics or favoritism comes into play in any organization.
Mm-hmm. And you're a certified woman-owned business.
Yes.
And I believe you've worked with government contracts.
Right.
Share with the viewers what some of the complexities of all of that and the benefits of being woman's own.
Once I created my business and got the LLC, I knew that I would qualify for woman-owned because I'm a woman and I'm the only person in the organization, so it's an automatic, but you had to fill out all the forms anyways, including my birth certificate to show that I was a woman, which sometimes is a problem with my name. I had the advantage that when I worked for local government, which was my previous career, I was a purchasing agent. So I knew how to write a bid, and therefore I knew how to respond to a bid. Most people do not understand the RFP and bid process and how to put together a proposal. So I had that advantage. However, I am now working with some projects to try to get federal, and that is unbelievably complicated. So I'm using some help through one of the agencies that helps small women businesses.
Okay.
But I haven't gotten a project yet. I've done state work and municipal work very easily, but federal government is a whole different ballgame.
And are you required to carry insurance in order to be a woman-owned business, or is that more of an individual decision?
No, it's not required to be a woman-owned business, but it is required by most municipalities. I've had the liability insurance since 2000 when I started my business.
Okay.
And I many times have to show my insurance certificate. Municipalities always ask for it. Not most of the profit places or even nonprofit probably don't ask for it. They don't know they should ask for it.
And confidentiality agreements, do organizations typically ask you to sign anything?
No, they don't.
No?
I haven't had anyone, of course, when we're doing resumes and all of that, it's all confidential until I have to give the information to them. Some places are required to put all of that information out to people, and some are not. But I keep it confidential till they tell me they want it. And of course, when we give them the finalist list, some of my committees sometimes talk about those candidates, and they shouldn't be, but we let our candidates know that your name's in a book and it can get out.
Okay.
So
that's the name of the game if you're in municipalities, is
Right.
that information becomes available as to who's
freedom of
being
information.
considered?
Yep. As long as it's with me, they can't get it. Except for the state of Florida has very open laws. They can get almost anything. But most of the other places, as long as it's in my hands and the resumes come to me, until it goes to the council or the board of supervisors or the commission, then those names don't get out.
And do you use social media? I mean, things must have changed since your business started,
Yeah,
right?
I have not done a lot with the social media other than LinkedIn. I always put my stuff on LinkedIn. I always put it on my website so people know that positions are available, and I have a couple of other people that put it on their website. So I let people know that way, and they tell their friends. So especially with LinkedIn, I put it out there, and someone says, "Oh, well, I have a friend that would be interested. Let me send you their information," and that works out great.
Okay.
But email is the biggest thing, and then advertising with the right places. There's a lot of associations that do free advertisement because they're trying to support their members. They have an email once a month that goes out and said, "Wanted to let you know these are the 3 jobs that are out there this month." And it's an
Okay.
email to their whole membership, which may be 3, 4, 5,000 people. Can't get better advertisement than that.
Yeah.
And most of my agencies don't know how to use that system, so that
Okay.
helps when I do that for them.
Now, before launching into consulting, you worked for some towns.
Right.
And if you could describe some of the jobs you held and why you chose to go into the independent path, because many of our viewers may at different
Right.
times consider
I never-
whatever their field is,
Right.
right?
I never thought I would be here. I went to school for local government and always saw myself in City Hall and never saw myself doing anything else. I started out with Virginia government, a county government, which we don't have here in Connecticut, but it's very much like city government. It's all the services. And I was a management budget analyst and worked with all the different departments, learned about all the agencies, all their exciting and different kinds of things. Did that in 2 counties, and then I came to Connecticut, and I was the assistant town manager in Rocky Hill, and I did HR, and I did purchasing, and I did grants, and I did budget, and I did risk management, and I did all of that stuff, worked with the town manager. And then I went to Cheshire as I was laid off in Rocky Hill during one of the downturns, and went to Cheshire as their assistant and did pretty much the same thing. And then Cheshire laid me off. They eliminated the position, but they needed me to come back because there was a whole transition going on, and there was no one in the manager's office to know what was going on. So they said, "Well, will you come back as a consultant?" And so what I said was, "Sure, but you have to buy me an insurance certificate, insurance policy, because everybody sues towns and everybody sues about HR. So, and I'm not an employee anymore, therefore I'm not covered under the town's insurance." And so they did. They thought they could buy a 3-month policy, but you can't. It's only a year policy. So I had a year to get my business started. And I continued to go to all my meetings and let everyone know that I was consulting, and got my first project in North Branford, where they needed someone to fill in. I knew the manager, and I ended up being there for 6 months, 2 to 3 days a week, doing risk management and purchasing and anything else the manager could think of. And then it just grew from there. And some projects I stay a long time with at one organization. Sometimes I just walk in and do a job description, or a full classification and compensation study. We've done those together, or an executive search, or they just pay me to do 2 or 3 things, and then I walk out. Sometimes I'm there longer, serving as an acting person, and it's worked out wonderful. So I'm still doing what I love, which is local government, but as my own business person, and never thought I would do it. I never thought that I would be anywhere but City Hall.
And so how many years have you been in consulting now?
2016 years.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah, right.
Most businesses don't last over 3 years or
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
So,
Made all those milestones.
right.
Now, if you could talk about your degrees, I know they're in public administration,
Right.
and how you came about to choose the career path.
Right. I have an undergraduate degree from the University of Rhode Island in urban affairs, and a graduate degree from the University of Southern California in Masters in Public Administration and Intergovernmental Management, which means federal, state, and local, how they work together. When I went to URI, I said to my counselor in my high school, I said, I'm not going to school and being one of those undecided. I need to decide what I want to do. And I had some wonderful opportunities to run organizations and, the different clubs in school and at my synagogue. So I was president and vice president, so I had all those experiences. I also had an internship down in City Hall in Norwich, where I grew up. When I talked about all of those things that I liked, she said, well, I think it's called urban affairs. I said, okay, that's what I want to do. And it really was what I wanted to do. I loved seeing things happen. And at the local level, things happen. I think I was telling you that I put together a project of a map of all the recreational facilities and parks and things in Norwich. 7 years later, I went, and that map was still on the wall. That's pretty cool for a high school student to do something that's on the wall in City Hall. I also was city manager for the day at Youth and Government program that we did in our high school. So I sort of got to know what that was all about. And then once I went to undergraduate school, I had a lot of internships and learned even more, which was wonderful.
What types of internships were you able to do while you were in college?
In college, at URI, I worked for a planner, the town planner, and I did an environmental assessment for them for a grant. Then she introduced me to the town manager, and he had me do an evaluation of all the 13 police union contracts to show the comparison of what his police department got versus others. And 10, 20 years later, I was doing the same thing in the real world.
Yeah.
So I really had great internships. I did projects that were needed and were real, because I ended up doing them 20 years later as high-level official. I also had the city of Barrington, Rhode Island. I helped him with his budget, and one of my projects for school was to write a grant. So I went to the town manager and I said, I got to write a grant. And so he gave me this big book of all these grants. He says, I'll look in here and find one that makes sense. And one day, this woman came into the office, and the manager called me in. He says, Randy, I got your grant for you. The woman says, we are going to choose Barrington for this grant, but you have to write it, and it's got to be done in a week. So I didn't go to school for a whole week. I wrote my grant. I got my $3,000, and I got my A.
Wonderful.
So it was great. It was a good experience trying to make those deadlines, and I've done grants before in the future after all of that, and you owe it always on those deadlines, and
Absolutely.
it's good to learn. So in graduate school was always an internship with each semester. So I did a federal internship, a state internship, and a local internship. So the federal government, I worked with ICMA, which is the City Management Association, and HUD, the Housing Association. And then at the state level, I worked with the League of California Cities, which is like our Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, and worked with the lobbying team to figure out which laws were good for the towns and not. And then I worked for a city government as my local government opportunity before I graduated.
I can see where you always pictured yourself in a city hall.
So it was always there, yeah. I loved it.
Share with the viewers the impact that getting the Truman Scholarship had on you.
That was so incredible. 1977 was the first year that they created this Truman Scholarship for Harry S. Truman, the president, and instead of making a statue or a building or any of those other things, they created a scholarship. They put money from the federal government into a savings account or whatever they do, and the interest was going to pay for scholars' college education. When in 1977 was 2 years undergrad, 2 years graduate. It is now just for graduate school. But for me, I had 2 years at URI. I applied for the process. I remember the professor, when I walked in, he said, "Oh, you're perfect. You're right in the middle." I had all these people with straight A students but had no experience, and I had all these other students with all kinds of experience but no grades. You have both of them. You're our candidate. I said, okay. And then I had to fill out all these forms. Then I went to Boston for an interview, and there was a big room like in the John F. Kennedy Center building up in Boston, and there was judges on the panel and secretary of this and this, very high level. I didn't even know what these positions were at that time. And they interviewed all the candidates. I was from Connecticut, so I was on the Connecticut list. Would have been nicer been on the Rhode Island. There's less people in Rhode Island, but I was on the Connecticut list since that's where I lived. And it was an interesting thing because they were like, well, what do you want to do with your life when you grow up, and why you want to go in? Because you had to be going into public service. And I said, well, I want to go into city management, community development, or city planning. I wasn't quite sure which I wanted at the time. They said, well, don't you want to work for the state government or the federal government? That's much bigger. And I pounded my fist and I said, no, because at the local level, you get things done and everyone knows what's happening.
Right.
And I came out of the interview and I was so upset because I've never been mean like that before. And I never, but he was egging me on. He was like coming over the table and everything. And I came out, Mom, I don't think I got it. I pounded on the table and told them what I thought. But I'm sure that's the reason I got it, because I was so enthusiastic. I really knew what I wanted to do, and I did it eventually. And so 2 years undergrad, 2 years graduate school, and I was able to pick a graduate school that I wouldn't have ever been able to go to because of the money. You got to know a whole bunch of, we have Truman Scholars all over the place. We have a senator now that's a Truman Scholar. We have people that are in high-level federal positions, and judges and attorney generals and all kinds of things, and city managers and all of
And
those,
HR people.
and HR people, and it's,
And you have annual meetings or
they get together
periodic?
Every 2 years for a conference. I'm the old lady in the group.
Okay.
Because these kids are younger than my son now, the ones that are getting the scholarship. And we have different conferences every once in a while, and you just get to network and see what everybody's doing. It's just fascinating. And it's a wonderful tribute to him. And we went to Independence, Missouri, where Truman's Library is, to receive our award from Margaret Truman Daniels when she was alive, and we got her book about her father. It was great.
And it's something that you're still involved with. And
Yes.
It was a pivotal.
Yeah, in fact,
point
I
in
just
your
sent out an
development.
email about the Truman. They have finalist dinners, so the kids that are going to for their interviews now, we try to have a dinner for them, and so I was spreading the word about the dinners.
And you say, don't be afraid to state your convictions.
Yes.
Okay.
They're
Great.
looking for that.
All right. I think most of us get wiser as we age. We kind of can't help it. And
Right.
some of those elements include being better able to cope with adversity and maybe a little more resilient, maybe a little more generous. But those are some thinkings around what the later years as we mature can bring.
Right.
So at this point in your life, if you could write a letter to your younger self, say 25, say 40, different points,
Right.
what advice would you give that younger Randy?
At 25, I was just starting my career because I was done with graduate school. And it seemed like I was never going to get there to the big job, and there was never opportunities. And I would have written to myself to say, enjoy what you're doing, learn as much, because the stuff I learned at 25 to 30 when I was down in Virginia just really helped me, because at 30 I was here in Rocky Hill, was my job as an assistant, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an assistant so I could be a manager someday. The stuff that I brought from Virginia was so helpful because people in Connecticut don't know what everybody else does because they're so centered on their activities. I was able to bring new ideas, use that stuff. So I would tell myself to relax, to enjoy it, take advantage of all the opportunities, and not worry so much.
Okay.
At 40, my son was 7, and it was a good age for kids, and then when he was 10 was when I started my business, and I was able to be home for him. It was such a great opportunity. As much as you love to be when they're babies and they're huggy and sweetie and all that stuff, they need more support when they're older, and I was able to be there and make him his snacks when he came home. Most times, if I wasn't there, he did it himself when he was older. I was able to go to the PTO meetings and the activities at school all the way through high school, and I wouldn't have been able to do that. But I was so worried about the idea of being a consultant and not making enough money. It was perfect. It was great. I always thought I would go back to being a city manager, but now that I'm older, I don't need to do it. I know I could do it if I had to. I don't need that stress. I'm doing what I love without the stress.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And I'm going to close with a quote from Katharine Graham.
Yes.
To love what you do and feel that it matters, what could be more fun?
Yes, I
Thank you,
love my work.
Randy, so much. It's very apparent, and I really appreciate you coming on. And please tune in to other episodes of MidLIFE Matters to hear women share their stories. Thanks so much. Georgian Lussier, your host.